Hey, everybody, welcome back to the RoundTable Sessions. I am your host, Ron Mentzer, and with me is my co-host, Kris Buchman from
Yes.
Three. Hey, man, what's going on?
What's up, buddy? I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
No. It's like this is episode 2. We're sort of getting into the swing of, although we do this on a regular basis with our other show, this is a little bit different format,
Yeah.
somewhat similar. And let's get into it, man. We're gonna sit around the round table and have a conversation. Today's episode is basically helping the audience get to know the hosts.
Right.
So we're gonna talk about ourselves a little bit, and
Yeah. Get to know us. I know people know us from the hunting shows and the hunting background stuff, but obviously we're a little more layered than that. Want to get into some more stuff outside of that. One thing me and you have similar is we're both list makers.
yeah,
And so we're kind of going to go through some stuff here, kind of get everybody a feel for us. And it's going to be a shorter episode that we talked about, what me and Ron call like a commuter episode while you're driving to work, while you're driving to church, Chick-fil-A, whatever. And I want to get these listeners' creative juices flowing, man. Think about your influences. Remember back to a time, because before we jump in, I tell my kids and people that ask me about my kids and even the hunting stuff, being a kid was supposed to be magical, right? I mean, it's supposed to be
right.
this fun time. Life can suck sometimes. Life is hard, So if we can take you on a trip back in time and get your thoughts and your creative juices flowing, we're going to do it. So hit it, Ron. Give me your background, dude. Tell me where you were born, where at, and let's get
All
into
right.
that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, look, I was born in the early '80s. Born in the early '80s to family. We had a big family actually. I got a brother, I got a sister. They're both older than me. I think I covered a little bit of this in the last episode, but they're old enough that they had like boyfriends or husbands and wives, when I was still a kid growing up. So like there's always been like my wife's husband's always been at the house, like when I was growing up, he was just another brother. My brother's wife, she was always at the house, just, another sister. So we had that. And then my grandparents, like they stayed at end of stage life. They came and lived with us, and my mom sort of looked after them and stuff. So there's always a house full of people.
Yeah, yeah,
And, so that's it. Like I grew up, my childhood was in the '80s. Till I was, going through, middle school, high school. It was the early '90s and throughout the '90s, is when I sort of like found myself and figured out who I was going to be and did all that. So like I got the best of both worlds. I remember life when a long telephone cord is
yeah.
that was golden because phones were attached to the wall. The inception of the internet, we didn't like. I remember my dad coming to us when we were younger and saying like, "Hey, if we got a computer, will you use it?"
Yeah,
Like I'm not going to make this investment if you're not going to like do your homework on it or something like that.
yeah, for sure.
So like to this day, my dad still doesn't have an email address. Like he was not an adopter at all.
Yeah,
But I remember when we got our first computer, but we didn't have, even though we had a computer, like we didn't use it online, like we didn't get online or anything like that. We were like really late adopters to all that sort of thing. So,
yeah. Me too.
um, that's sort of the time frame which I grew up. South Central Pennsylvania, like born in Gettysburg area, so always having every summer, you deal with tourists and that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Everybody coming to tour the battlefields and things like that. But you get used to it. You avoid town during certain months of the year.
Yeah,
But South Central Pennsylvania, country boy, apple orchards, peach orchards, fruit farming, like that sort of thing. I grew up working construction, with the family business, and sort of I think my dad stopped trusting us, me and the neighbor kids, by the time I was about 9 years old. Because we ran the neighborhood on our bikes and stuff. So like by the time I was 9 years old, I had a solid summer job. I was going to work.
yeah,
I don't know that I was worth much at work, but
yeah.
I was going to work and I wasn't staying at home running the neighborhoods and that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I like cut my teeth and grew up and made a lot of memories doing that sort of thing. But that's my basis. How about you, Kris? Give me a little bit of your background.
Yeah, man. So I was made in DC in 1982, man. My parents are from the foothills of Northern Maryland, but my dad's a preacher. His first church was in Washington, D.C. That's where I was born. Only lived there for a couple of years. Then my parents came back up here to family farm. Then I lived again, Northern Maryland, Carroll County, foothills of the Appalachians, and Mason-Dixon. I mean, just minutes from you. I always say, you know, where I live isn't the middle of nowhere, even though it feels like it's actually the middle of everything. You know, you can get to Baltimore, D.C. in a couple hours. Pittsburgh, Philadelphia is not far away. Harrisburg, you know, you can travel anywhere, but you can feel like you're in the country, you know. And, you know, we grew up, we talked about in the last one, running creeks, riding bikes, playing baseball. You know, you knew what time to come home. You know, we went to church, you know, fairly normal growing up. I mean, they make memes about people like me and, you know, Ron, you know, we've lived through all these decades, you know, born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, you know, watching Ninja Turtles and Fresh Prince and Saved by the Bell, you know, all that stuff, you know, and, you know, pretty normal childhood until I realized it wasn't that normal. You know, my dad literally, I've talked about this on the hunting shows, he built a log cabin for us, one of those kits, and we lived in the woods. And just like you, man, I didn't have internet till they sent out those like Juno and or those discs. Remember the AOL discs you got in the free trial? I remember dialing them up and getting on the internet and doing stuff like that. But we had the 4 channels on TV. We didn't have satellite until I was a junior in high school.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right for us. I remember when we got Prime Star.
Yeah,
Prime Star was like the satellite option. If it was a first dish, like some people spent the money and had that big 8-foot dish in their yard on a huge pole, but like the first like smaller satellite dish that in this area was Prime Star.
I remember
and it was on a pole and out in the middle of our yard. And man, life changed whenever we got that because we actually got channels.
Yes.
Other than just locals. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, diving in, I mean, just mind blowing, you know, and by that time I'm working and running around and driving. So TV wasn't a huge thing. I got into some movies and stuff, but, you know, let's piggyback into that, man. As a kid, you know, what were you into? What kind of cartoons and stuff were you into? That we were in the prime time for cartoons.
Yes. Yeah. So Saturday morning cartoons. You know, you get up and watch TV before you go to school and, you know, you caught your cartoons in the morning. All right. So like, I remember being a fan of He-Man.
Yeah.
Like He-Man was when I was young, that was my favorite show. Right. And so like, I loved watching He-Man. I liked, you know, the Thundercats, G.I. Joe, you know, was a go-to, like all these real popular ones. And I think, you know, with the toy industry, you know, they pushed a lot of that stuff. Like, so it was like mid 80s. I think towards the late 80s, like He-Man kind of like died off. I don't know when they stopped showing that.
Yeah.
But then I was a Ninja Turtle guy.
Yes.
You know, and like so into the late 80s. You know, I became you know, Turtle Power type fella, and I liked all the movies that came out and that sort of stuff. And you know, so like those are like the main cartoons, but that I like would say I was brought up on.
Yeah.
But you know, if you list a cartoon that was on TV on like mainstream Saturday mornings or whatever, like I'm sure I watched it.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I remember watching DuckTales and stuff like that growing up. Like I'm not a big Disney guy, but I do dig Scrooge McDuck. You know, this dude was swimming in coins.
Yeah.
And always off on an adventure and that sort of thing. So, but He-Man was my go-to. Like if I have to say like top, you know, we talk about like a Mount Rushmore of cartoons.
Yeah.
You know, He-Man, G.I. Joe. Like I liked Thundercats, but it wasn't like my. I don't know if it'd make my Mount Rushmore or not, but you know, we'll throw it in there. And I'm thinking like early childhood, not like once I got older, because you outgrow some of these things too.
Right.
But they would definitely be, you know, top 5 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid, He-Man was just it for people our age. You know, toys, the play sets, the toy swords. Actually, down where we live, I have no connection to this place either. So there's a place in Westminster called Eternia Dreams that sells vintage
That's
and
cool.
retro toys, and it's He-Man themed, obviously. And you can go get that. And I should have got it out for this, but uh, I have a plastic power sword from
Mm-hmm.
1984 that my wife got me the other year for. It's pretty cool. He-Man was big. I loved the Thundercats. GI Joe was cool. I remember getting up early, and GI Joe and Transformers were one after another.
Transformers. That's a good
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
And then as I got older, always just been an outside kid. As I got older, I got really into Batman the animated series.
All right.
And fan. Nothing was cooler growing up as a kid than the X-Men cartoon, and the theme song for that. I mean, it's just. I remember me and my brother would actually take a handheld tape recorder and put by the TV for when that song would come on, so we could record the theme song. Right? You know,
Right.
DuckTales, Tailspin. I don't know if you remember that one. I remember
I
watching
do.
it a lot.
Yeah.
I still, to this day, am a big Garfield fan. So that was real big.
So Garfield was on in the mornings. I
Mhm.
remember watching Garfield before getting on the school bus. And yeah, that was a good one.
There's actually a cool, again, no affiliation. There's a free streaming thing called Pluto TV.
Right, yeah.
Um, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the whole theme of that is they have themed channels. So,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, there's a whole Bob Ross painting channel. 24 hours a day, it's Bob Ross. They have a whole um, Andy Griffith Show channel, a whole Bonanza channel, a whole Adams Family.
Take you
It's
back.
yeah, theme like that. Cops, Hell's Kitchen, Gordon Ramsay. It's just themed channels like that, and they have a Garfield channel that me and my one son watch every single night.
Yeah, that's got to be
Before we go
cool
to
if
bed.
because you got kids and
Yeah, and
you're able
obviously,
to like watch the stuff that you grew up
yeah, and then
with them.
the books. I remember getting the Garfield books a lot, the actual compilation comic books and stuff. But cartoons into comic books, that was huge for me growing up. Still into comics. I have a big comic collection. I'll probably show that. I'll probably transition at some point in this from my hunting spot here where we filmed the hunting show to the other side of the room where some of my comic books are. Um,
Yeah, well, if you dig like X-Men and Batman and stuff, it sounds like you were like into the superheroes and the comics
yeah,
and
and
stuff.
I,
So
and I
like,
still.
are you
I,
more of a DC guy or a Marvel guy?
so here's how I break that down, especially because I have kids. I love DC actual comics. The
Mm-hmm.
comic books are better. The Dark Knight with Christian Bale. Those are fantastic movies. And some of the DC movies have cool elements, but for the most part, DC movies suck.
Mm-hmm.
They just suck. Visually, some of them are cool. Some of the Zack Snyder stuff he did were cool. Henry Cavill as Superman was awesome. But the movies, they're just not pulling it together. So for the actual comic books, I love DC. Again, huge Batman fan, huge Green Arrow fan, Green Lantern, the
Right.
Flash. I love all that stuff. But for the movies, obviously, again, we talked about X-Men, the cartoon. That got me into some Marvel comics. But the movies are movies and TV for Marvel.
Marvel.
It's just much better.
I
And
can dig it. I can
my
dig
kids
it.
are into it too, so that's always pretty cool. I mean, I remember a couple years ago we went and saw Captain America: Civil War, and I was so pumped because I took my sons and they were at the age where they were, you know, uh, 6 or 7, whatever, really getting into it. And I looked over and Spider-Man swinging in for the first time. He's making his debut, and my kids are on the edge of their seat, and I'm like, this is awesome. And then I realized that I was too. I was just as
You're
into
on the
it,
edge of your seat. Well,
you
look,
know.
we're all little boys at heart,
Yeah,
right?
and and what you just said is encapsulating what this show is. Let's bring it back, man. We can be grown-ups and have serious jobs, but let's remember the fun stuff. Let's talk about this fun stuff, man. So what about sports, man? What are your favorite sports? You got an O's shirt on right now.
All right, yeah. So not the best year, but I'm
No.
repping the O's. Sort of born into that. Got family down in Baltimore. My mom's from Baltimore, so we're all Orioles fans. So like I dig the black and orange. Cal
Yes.
Ripken was like the guy.
Yeah.
Growing up for me as a kid. Yeah. So from a baseball perspective, and I love baseball. It's always been the Orioles. I'm in Pennsylvania, and so like I don't know what the logic is. I don't root for Pennsylvania teams.
Mhm.
So when it goes to football, Pittsburgh's always like they got a tradition. Steelers are a great team,
Mhm.
always winning. I don't think the fans, I'll probably lose a lot of fans. The audience won't like this, but I don't think Pittsburgh fans know how to behave or act like when they're winning. I could probably say the same thing for Baltimore fans, though.
Awful, awful.
Philly fan, I mean, enough said, right? Philly's crazy, so
Yeah.
if you're from the Philly side of the state, they don't know how to act either. So I'm a black and orange guy. Closest thing, like whenever I was growing up, late 80s, early 90s, Cincinnati Bengals were black and orange.
Yeah.
Had Boomer Esiason, Ickey Woods,
Hmm.
had some fun players to watch.
Yeah.
They were doing pretty good, and in fact, the Reds won a World Series in 1990. The Cincinnati
Hmm.
Reds. So like, I just like started following Cincinnati sports.
Hmm.
Don't ask me why. I mean, other than Bengals have the coolest uniforms in the
They have
NFL.
the coolest uniforms, and
Yeah.
I'm
So
not good.
yeah, I was just gonna say like my issue is this is like my loyalty. I'm like a high loyalty dude. So
Yeah.
like that matters a lot to me. And so in the late 80s they were head of some winning seasons, and then like all through the 90s they were horrible.
Yeah.
It's like I just like stuck with my team,
Yeah.
just like rooting for the O's. Like there's not that many winning seasons like where we were contending for
Hmm.
championships in my lifetime, but look, it's your team, so you follow that. So yeah, grow up on Boomer Esiason on the Wheaties, and on the Wheaties box, and rooting for the Bengals and the Orioles, and basketball. Like I played basketball growing up, but I really never
Hmm.
had a team that I followed that closely.
Hmm.
I'd rather watch college basketball than the NBA. So I'm a North Carolina Tar Heels. My dad's a
Yeah.
Marine. My brother was born
Hmm.
down in North Carolina, and so that's probably the only team that I follow that is like has consistently wins.
Yeah.
college
I
college
was
hoops.
actually, it's funny you say that. I have a North Carolina. I was going to wear my North Carolina shirt tonight.
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, for me growing up, obviously the Orioles were huge. And I remember being a little kid and dad taking us to games, and they didn't have, you parked in Baltimore City and you walked, and I
Old
remember
Memorial
walking with people.
Stadium.
Yeah. People walking, dragging coolers. And we
Yep.
went there. The Orioles was it for me as a kid. Baseball was life. And baseball is starting to come back a little bit. But when we were kids, I mean, baseball was the thing. I mean, you didn't have to teach us to play. We knew how to play baseball. That's what you did. You
Yep.
went out and played baseball with your friends, right?
You learned
Baseball
to
cards.
catch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you just
baseball card. So like, all right, let's go baseball cards.
mhm.
Did you have a preferred brand that you collected? Do you collect them
Well,
all, or
I collected them all, and I remember when we were kids and we played little league. You could go to the snack shack, or even maybe your coach gave you a bubblegum pack of cards. That was
mm-hmm,
usually Tops.
right?
Dunruss, I was a big Dunruss fan. Fleer had all the cool stuff. I have to see who made them. I want to say it's Fleer, but it might be Upper Deck. I don't know if I still have it. When they did the All Star game in '94, I think in Camden Yards, they did a
Yeah.
whole All Star set of cards, and my dad got them for us.
Yeah,
They were
that's
black
cool.
and
Upper
orange
decks
cards.
they were really good. They
Yeah,
seemed like they in my eyes they were. I mean, I have probably more tops cards than
yeah,
any.
yeah,
But I got a lot of, I got all the brands, but assortment, but upper decks, whenever I could get my hands on some upper deck cards,
yeah. They were the
they were real
coolest.
cool to have.
I enjoy watching now. There's YouTube channels and Reels and TikToks and Instagram, Facebook stuff of guys going around from our childhood opening packs up looking for certain cards. But baseball was it, man. Baseball cards. You had your books and your little containers for them. The Orioles for baseball. We weren't allowed to be Yankees fans.
No,
Uh, no, I remember just because it was trendy when I was in high school. I asked for a Yankees hat, and my dad was like, "I'll get you one, but you can't wear it in the house." And
yeah,
I thought
not
he
in
was
this house.
joking. Yeah. Football, where I grew up, Maryland, we didn't have a team till the 90s. The closest thing that we had was the Redskins. So I have a little affinity to them.
Yep.
Um, my dad's a hardcore Ravens fan now. But football was never, when I was a kid, you kind of hit on it with the Bengals, and then the 49ers were big for a while.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, 49ers were real good, and
the
Cowboys, I
Cowboys,
guess Cowboys had their dynasty in their early mid
yeah.
90s.
If I wasn't into football, basketball I was into, and I was a Chicago Bulls fan. I still have a Chicago Bulls hat, and I still have my Chicago Bulls hat from when I was a kid. Uh,
Mhm.
Nothing in the era that we grew up to, nothing was as big. And a little foreshadowing, one of our next episodes is going to be a sports episode. But there was nothing bigger than Cal Ripken, Hulk Hogan, and Michael Jordan, and Bo Jackson. You
Yeah,
know,
Bo
uh,
Jackson, man, he was a freaking nature. He
there's
was a
actually a
freaking
cool
nature.
looping back to cartoons. I believe it was called the Pro Stars. There was a cartoon, and it was Michael Jordan, Bo Jackson, and Wayne Gretzky. They were like these kind of super powered sports stars in this thing, and it always stood out to me. But I was into the Bulls. I actually still have in my gun safe. I have an original before it was all Nike. I have an original Air Jordan backpack that I wore to like fifth grade, and I just kept stuff in it since then. But
Yeah,
then
that's awesome to have that stuff.
I shifted into like the Charlotte Hornets. Then remember those colors, those teals. The Mariners switched it to teals, and
Yep.
uh, the Charlotte Hornets. So here's the thing: I didn't put on our question list. Did you have a starter jacket, and which one did you have if you did?
Okay, so I did not have like the popular starter jacket like you're talking about. Like real popular, kind of like I don't call a windbreaker, but like a
Yeah,
baggy type of, and the Charlotte
pullovery.
Hornets pullover, like those are real
Mm-hmm.
popular. I had literally like you would see the manager like Earl Weaver, like a manager's jacket that was made by
Yeah,
Starter. It was super shiny black with Baltimore insignias on it, and it was unique. And I remember I had a kid in school. Like for me, like stuff. I never wore trendy stuff. I didn't have the cool stuff. Everything
yeah,
was handed me down. And but that was like a really awesome gift I got from my aunt and uncle whenever I was pretty young for Christmas. And so like I wore it. Like I loved that jacket. And I remember this kid in school telling me like that's not a real starter jacket. Like he could
yeah,
it wasn't the trendy thing that he thought
yeah,
was a starter jacket. But yeah, it was kind of like a manager's jacket that buttoned up the front
yeah,
and had the orange like the elastic around the
yeah.
wrists and the elastic around the waist, and it was pretty sweet, man. And I think once I outgrew it, obviously, I think I gave it to one of my nephews.
Yeah.
I have to ask them
You probably
if
had the
they.
realest one there was. I mean, that's probably realer than the other. You
Yeah, no
know.
doubt, no doubt. But I remember the starter jackets were real popular.
Yeah,
Whenever we were
I
in
had a Charlotte
grade
Hornet
school,
one. Yeah, my
everybody had that color, and the Hornets weren't like a good team. They just
mm-mm.
had like I don't know. They branded that.
They were the first ones, like kind of back, and then it was kind of shifting from the '80s to the '90s and rebranding. And
Yeah,
Mariners kind of went with that. Then I had that. I remember my brother Josh. It was on the first episode with us. He had a Mighty Ducks one, and that was still when they were kind of from the movies and the cartoony,
sure.
Mighty Ducks, stuff like that. So, you know, I think I got it for Christmas and stuff. Christmas was always my favorite holiday. We didn't grow up. I don't want to say we were poor, but we were. But Christmas was always special. So I remember getting a Nintendo for Christmas one year. We didn't
Yeah.
go out. We went to McDonald's maybe once a week. We went to the beach once a year. We didn't do that stuff. We didn't go to the movies. But my dad always made Christmas really special. And I got that Charlotte Hornets jacket for that, I'm pretty sure. So, what about you? What favorite holidays, memories, something like that growing up? What do you got?
Yeah, I think that Christmas, like for every kid, is awesome. My brother made it fun. What I mean, he like I said, he was older. He got married probably. I was like 7 or 8, 6 or 7, something like that when he got married. So he wasn't in the house anymore. But I remember him and his wife would still come down on Christmas morning, like super early, and help
Yeah,
me like roll mom and dad out of bed and like my mom made Christmas, like she went nuts
Yeah.
on gifts and that sort of stuff. And like that is the one time a year I can agree with what you were saying. Like there's a lot. I'm um I'm an October guy. Like I was born in October. Hunting starts to get good in October. Um, Halloween's like another black and orange type. Like those are my
Hmm.
colors. So like I always liked Halloween growing up because it was starting to be that time of year where now I hate it because it's getting dark early. But when you're a kid, like yeah, we can go running around after dark
Yeah.
instead of like daylight. So those are probably. I mean, definitely Christmas is a go to holiday. And I liked Halloween because it was it's the same my birth month, and I thought that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
I know a big thing for you is music, right?
Yeah.
You're a bit of a
Yes.
musician yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so like what? Let's talk music and bands and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Growing up, man. I mean, again, I said it a little bit last time, and I've talked about in the other shows. My dad always had a radio on. There was always something playing. I'm very similar to how you grew up, Ron, where my older siblings are older, significantly older, 10,
Hmm.
10, 13 years older than me. So they were born in the 70s. So there was always records, actual records laying around.
Right, right,
So I remember listening to records, and I remember, that type of thing. And then we hinted at it last time. My dad got us the music subscriptions, and I started getting into that with Walkmans. And discovery of music for me just opened up so many things. And you know, as a teenager, when I actually got my license and started driving to school and listened to the radio, that getting into hard rock and metal, the discovery of like Metallica and Megadeth
right. Yeah.
um, was cool. The punk rock band, the Misfits, which is my favorite band. I have their logo tattooed on me. Like that was just so formative to me, and really helped me find. I know you've said this about hunting and the outdoors, but that helped me find my identity at the time. Like this is where I'm at. This is just I feel welcome here. As a teenager, you think you're alone and all just all that mumbo jumbo, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
it really envelops me. And I'll tell you something that's really really cool. My wife and I collect Coca Cola stuff because we're old now, and uh, I went and I bought. It looks like a cooler, and it's a Coca Cola radio, and you open the top up, and it has a cassette player in it. And I still
Oh,
have a
cool.
bunch of cassettes. Somewhere deep in the recesses of one of these boxes I had, this is really cool. I found a blank mixtape that I had made from when I went to school, and I would go to school and I would record the radio just
Hmm.
to see what the songs were on, while I was going to school. Popped it in here. It's like listening to the radio from 1996. It has commercials from 96 on it. It has,
Oh,
oh,
really?
check this new song from, whoever, it's like a traveling back in time. And the radio station that I listened to, maybe you had too, Hard Rock, was 105.7 The X, which
Right.
is the Pennsylvania station I got. So you're hearing these old DJs. Really, really cool. Like, man, this is rad and stuff. But yeah, music was a big thing for me. Still is. That's where I got into that. And I had a friend in school that we would trade back and forth tapes. He would record stuff for me and try to show each other some stuff. And that was my big thing. So the metal scene, heavy metal, Metallica. Sorry, Dad, Metallica and Ozzy. I got into that, Megadeth. But what about you? I know you hinted at it last time, but what about you with that stuff?
Yeah, I got into like heavy metal when I was in high school. Probably more towards sophomore to graduation type age. But growing up, like I said, South Central PA, country bumpkin, that sort of
Hmm.
stuff. Like I grew up on country music.
Yeah,
But then rock and roll. I mean, who was popular in the late '80s and the early '90s? I'm not a hair band guy,
yeah,
but one band when I started collecting music was a lot of Guns N' Roses.
yeah.
They sort of came out with they broke the genre from that hair band
Hmm.
late '80s to more aggressive rock and roll.
Yeah. Had a lot of
But
attitude with it. It was aggressive.
yeah,
Like you said.
right. When
Yeah.
they came out with Appetite for Destruction, that was
Hmm.
like a shift in the the culture of what radio play music, and they played some ballads too, and I
Yeah.
like I would say, like, because come from a country background, and the best country music, like George Strait
Hmm.
is the man when it comes to country music. Like
Hmm.
I could listen to George Strait all the time, but I like that, like, southern rock
Yeah.
style music,
I hear you.
So Leonard Skinner, that sort of, like, I didn't collect their music, but like I like that style of music,
Yeah. A
just
dirty,
natural.
dirty kind
Yeah.
of gritty. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so but yeah, I think when I started collecting music, like Guns N' Roses was like the band that started collecting a lot of their music and had all their albums and that sort of stuff, and then it just branches out from there as you explore. But I remember when I was young and we listened to the radio, like this was before even we didn't even have. I'm sure they existed, but I didn't. We didn't own a digital radio.
Hmm.
Everything was just on the dial. Like you
Hmm.
had to turn the dial. And growing up, we'd have like trash bin. Like we would burn our trash that we could burn, a burn barrel. And
Hmm.
so, like, that was a chore. Like I'd have to go out and burn the trash. Well, there was a radio with a dial, and I remember, I don't know how old I was, but it's like almost like the discovery of music, where I'm like, I'm going to listen to music while I do this, and just
Yeah.
going through and finding the stations that were available and which ones came in clear. And then, like, well, no, I really don't like that music. And you keep on
Hmm.
turning the dial until you find music that you like.
Hmm.
And I remember doing that, and discovering music, and it really does open up a different part of. It's another world, when
Yeah.
you dive into music.
Yeah. It's funny. Just when you just said that, just took me on a trip, man. I remember my mom was taking me somewhere in the car, and we stopped at a Kenny's grocery store, and she ran in real quick and left the car running. Back when that wasn't like a sin to do when you were a kid,
Right? Yeah.
leaving the
No.
kid in the car. And I wasn't that little, anyways. But I remember turning the dial to the rock station and just catching it at the right time. And Metallica's "Wherever I May Roam" was on. First time I ever
Hmm.
heard it, and I mean, it just grabbed me. And I mean, I remember it still uh, to this day. That grabbed me. In fact, I think I've thought about getting some of the lyrics of that tattooed on me. I don't have a lot of easy spots left to get tattooed, so it had to be on my chest, and that kind of scares me because that's supposed to hurt. But that's kind of where I'm at with that. But shifting out of that, moving along. What did you guys travel as kids? Where'd you go? Any place to hold a special place in your heart as a kid that you guys went or did?
We didn't travel. So, like, my folks, we didn't do vacations. If we went on vacation, we went back to North Carolina, where my dad and my mom got married, and
Mm-hmm.
they're from the PA area, but they got married when he came back from Vietnam. He was still in the Marines, and had some family. They call them family members. I mean, they had some elders down there that took them in and were like adopted parents. And so, occasionally every few years, we would make a trip back down to North Carolina and spend a week with them, so mom and dad could visit. And most of those folks are gone now. Dad still goes down, once in a while. It's been a couple of years, but that's the only, like, we didn't go to the beach. We did not go. Occasionally, we went camping. But so, like, I don't have any, like, special places that I hold near and dear to my heart. And because of that upbringing, I really don't love to, like, travel. Like, I have no desire to go. And my wife wants to go, like, see the world and stuff. I'm like, man, like, you know, Cumberland County's pretty good to me. I mean, let's go to
Yeah,
a hunting cabin. If you want to
yeah,
go, take me to the mountain. I'm happy there.
I gotcha.
Yeah. How
Yeah,
about
we always
yourself?
we always went again once a year. My dad took us to the beach. Went to Ocean City, Maryland,
Right.
and that holds a special place in my heart. I haven't been for a couple of years. That's a story for off the air why I haven't gone back there. Uh,
Yeah.
but and it's become a touristy.
It's not like it used to be at all.
No, and I'm sure there's nice parts there still, and it does holds a nostalgic thing for me. We duck hunt not far from there, so driving through there,
Hmm.
it always takes me back. And the pizza place that Josh and I and my family went to as kids just closed. Uh,
Ah,
We always stayed up at the north end, almost in Delaware, where it's more family stuff. But we always went there. We took a couple day trips here and there, but that was it, man. We grew up very meager, and we would go to the movies there. I remember seeing Jurassic Park there with my dad. We begged him to see it, take us to see it, and it scared the snot out of us. And
Yeah, did you regret that?
I mean, trying to be tough, and then you look back at it's hokey, but in theaters it was scary. I remember my little brother, who's 3 years younger than me, so he might have only been 9 or 10 at the time, if that. He was like, "Dad, I have to go to the bathroom." And my dad said, "No, you don't. You're going to sit here and watch it. You wanted to see it."
Yeah.
He tried to warn us, all that stuff. But we'd play mini golf, and even to this day, kind of what you said about not traveling, but we would always go there. But we didn't do a whole lot. We went on vacation to relax. So we didn't run around. We weren't doing day trips and getting up at 6. And, if that's how you relax, then good for you, man. That wasn't us. We chilled out. We'd go to the beach, and my mom would get us Pop-Tarts and the little cereal sampler boxes. We always had those down there. But that was it. And we took some day trips here and there. We went to Lancaster. And we would go to, Western Maryland for the day. But we didn't go places and stay too much. And, looking back, our house where we said it was cool, man. Where we grew up was cool. Why would you go anywhere? We have everything we want right here,
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. But I mean, so hopefully, this episode, I know we're talking about ourselves a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think that, comparing this show to the other show that we do, the other show is more of a niche audience, like outdoorsman type thing. Everybody can relate to this time period. They grew up in this time period. So it's a wider appeal. And I think that when we're talking about the cartoons, we're talking about the way we grew up and how it was in high school and that sort of stuff. It probably appeals to it's more relatable to a wider audience.
Yeah.
So hopefully this episode's been good to help the audience get to know the hosts.
Yeah.
Because we want to touch on this stuff, and we're all about feedback. So like you said at the beginning, we're both lists guy. We'll list down ideas and how we're going to go about doing things. But I want to get some feedback from folks that are listening to this show. Now, we've got some feedback already off of episode 1, which is really, really cool.
Marty Stauffer.
We were talking about Marty Stauffer, buddy of mine. He's like, man, that hit home. When I heard you guys talking about that took me back. Yeah. Many of us had similar upbringings because, look, let's face it, back in the 80s and early 90s, you didn't have the plethora of choices that kids growing up today, they could just, TV shows, radio stations, internet, the world's your oyster. Didn't have all that back then. So I'm excited to see some of the topics that we're going to hit on in upcoming episodes. And, hopefully we get more feedback like that from folks out there, in the listening audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Hit us up, guys. These guys that are listening. I just went full Pennsylvania there. I said, use guys. Anybody?
That's Western PA,
Okay.
Yeah, but that's that Pittsburgh talk, yins.
Yeah, yins, guys. Anyway, people that are listening, hit us up with, message us, man. Tell us your favorite cartoons. Tell us what we missed. I'm thinking about 1,000 right now. Bobby's World and
Bobby's World, man, that was awesome.
Yeah, Muppet Babies, stuff like all these are going through my head right now. Let us know, man. Let us know what you watched. Get your juices flowing, man. Take a trip in time with us, man. And coming up, we got some sports ones that we're going to talk about. Really deep dive into sports. Our boy Denon from Tales from the Loft is going to come on, and this might make or break us, though, Ron. We're going to get into some deep conspiracy theories.
Well, I'm ready to talk there. I mean, you're either going to find another niche audience, or it'll turn people off with our opinions on things. Yeah. But
we're going to do that.
I'm ready to go there.
Yeah, and then we got a good friend of mine that's a toy collector and a toy buyer, seller, trader guy, and we're going to do
connoisseur.
Connoisseur. Yeah, we're going to do a toys that made us episode, and we're going to really probably get into some He-Man stuff. That was his Masters of the Universe was his thing. But
love it.
Tell us what you want to hear. Tell us what you listened to. Tell us what you watched. If you want to come on, message us. Tell us what you want to hear about. So that's about it. That's us.
Yep, that's it. That's no doubt about it. We're having fun. I'm enjoying doing these. I'm enjoying sitting around the table, and whether it's just Chris and I, or whether it's like a whole group of people that come on here and we have like master dialogue about growing up in that time frame. This show is all about our journey, like what made us into who we are today.
Yeah.
So we invite you into that conversation. You have a place at the table, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.